In the previous section of this course, we talked about, or at least we began to talk about, building calculations within Excel. And we saw just a simple little calculation. We were able to do some addition as far as referencing cells. We were able to take a cell reference, such as B4, and then add that to cell reference B5. Then add that to B6 and B7 and B8. We were able to do some addition. You've got all your mathematical operators available to you. You've got the addition symbol, you got minus, subtraction, you got multiplication, you got division, you got your exponent, you got all those various operators that you can utilize to perform arithmetic type calculations. Math, right? Well, built into the Excel application, the nice people at Microsoft have built several functions that we can then utilize to perform calculations. So that's what we're going to take a look at next year. And I've created this super slick little PowerPoint presentation to talk a little bit about what Excel functions are, how we can utilize them to help us become more efficient as we work with our data inside of Excel. So let's jump into the PowerPoint here. And I'm going to provide this as a download resource so you can take this PowerPoint and do whatever you like with it. So first off, an Excel function. Really, all an Excel function is a predefined calculation. That's it. Now, the nice people at Microsoft have built a few hundred different functions for us to use. These predefined little packages that'll do some type of calculation. Whether it's summing up a range of cells, it's finding an average within a range of cells, it's looking up information based on criteria that we give the application. It could be a whole slew of things. I want to be able to find my house payment or the next car that I buy. How much am I going to pay for that monthly? Well, built into Excel, they have a function called PMT, or the payment function, that will do that for you. Now, in order for us to utilize a function, we need to really understand what the function is and what are the different pieces of a function. So let me give you an example here. So this is going to be one of the first functions that we see inside of this course. This is the most common function that is used worldwide within Excel. This is the sum function. So here's an example, and this is taken right from the exercise file from the monthly budget worksheet that we're creating together as a group. So the sum function, as you can see here, I want to build a sum up. I want to add up a range of cells. Well, in order for me to do that, we can do it like we did earlier, where I say equals this cell plus 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 this, right? I can do that and do that and do that. What if you have thousands of records and you want to add up, you want to sum up all of that data? That could take forever, right? Typing that out like we did earlier. Well, built into Excel, we got the sum function that'll streamline those efforts. Now, I want to break down functions in general. There's really three different pieces that we use as we build out an Excel function. Now, we just saw a quick preview of the sum function, but let's now break it down into its three different pieces. The first thing, and we've actually already seen this, every calculation, from the simplest calculation to the most absurd, complex, uber huge, dynamic, whatever, huge function, right, or calculation, they all start with the same thing. From the most basic to the most complex, they all start with the equal sign. Now, the next step, as far as using a function, you then need to designate or denote which function you want to use. For example, if I want to sum up a range of cells, I'll say equals, and I'll bring in the sum function. That's its name, sum, S-U-M. If I want to find the average of a range of cells, I'll say equals average. That's it. Now, the thing about learning functions, it's just that. You got to learn the functions. We got to know that, oh, there's a sum function. There's an average function. There's a function for looking up information. There's a function for finding the minimum value from a range of cells or the maximum value from a range of cells. We got to learn what the functions are. But once you got that down, then there's one more piece. We got to bring in the function arguments or the parameters that that function needs. So let me give you an example of a complete function here. So this is what we were looking at earlier. It's got all three pieces. It's got the equal sign. Remember, that's a given. You always do that with any type of calculation. Then you got the function name. In this case, you got sum. And then the sum function specifically, within the parentheses, needs to know the range of cells that you want to sum up. In this case, equal sum. Let's sum up cells B4 through B8. And as far as functions are concerned, when you deal with a range of cells, to say through, like B4 through B8, we use the colon character. B4 colon B8. That's your through. That's your range of cells. So that's really the three pieces. Equals, the function name, and any arguments or parameters that that function needs in order for it to do its job. Remember, these functions, they're predefined. The nice people at Microsoft built them. They determine how we use them and what types of data it needs to do its job. That's where the arguments come into play. Now, the next thing that I want to bring your attention to, and we're going to get very familiar with this window. This is called the function arguments window. This is a little window built into the Excel application that's going to assist us in utilizing these functions, especially when you're just starting out utilizing functions, whether it's the sum function or something more complex like index and match or VLOOKUP or some other more complex function. You're going to want some help. So this function argument window is going to come in very handy because it'll kind of take your hand and walk you through the process and explain each step to you. So you can find this window by going to the little FX button, which is right next door to the formula bar towards the top of your window within Excel. You'll see just a little button up there. It'll say FX on it. You click on it and you can go find your functions, and then eventually you'll bring it into the arguments for that specific function. Now here, I'm looking at the arguments for the sum function. You can see number 1 and number 2 there. Well, the number 1 and number 2, they're just expecting a range of cells. Well, you want to sum, what is it that you want to sum? So here I just said I want to sum B4 through, remember colon, through B8. Now, the nice thing about this window is, again, it kind of takes your hand, walks you through the process. They give you some great information. Like here, they're going to tell you what the function does. Might be brief. Here it just says, hey, the sum function, it adds up all the numbers in a range of cells. Great. The next thing it tells you is, well, what do those arguments mean? What is number 1? What is number 2? Well, it says number 1, number 2, and so on. You can have between 1 and 255 numbers to sum, or ranges of cells that you can sum up. 255, that's quite a bit. It's also, down in the lower left-hand corner of the window, is a nice little link that'll jump you out to a Microsoft page that'll give you some help about the active function. So in this case, if I click that link, help on this function in the lower left, it'll take me to a Microsoft page that talks all about the sum function. Super slick, very helpful. So this is your arguments window. Again, Excel's got all sorts of functions in there. As you're learning them, I highly suggest not only going through this course and learning the functions, I'm going to walk you through them, but read through the window. Get an idea of what they're all about and potentially what you're going to be using them for and what you could use them for. Now, like I mentioned, there are loads of functions inside of Excel. By the last number that I read, as of the 2013 edition, we've actually a few versions later, there were 461 functions built into the Excel application. That's quite a bit. Then Microsoft adds functions, they remove functions, and typically when they remove a function, they replace it with something else. Something that's more streamlined, more efficient, does more for you, is more accessible, those types of things. But there are loads of functions inside of Excel. Now here, this is a part of the ribbon inside the Excel interface. This is the Formulas tab. You'll find the Formulas tab there at the top of your screen. Now here, they give you what's called the function library, essentially a bunch of little books where you can go find all these various functions. And we're going to take a look at this. We're going to become familiar with it and how you can find the various functions that live inside of your copy of Excel. All right, so get ready for this. I'm excited. I love functions. Any way that's going to save me time and help me become more efficient as I'm performing calculations, great. Let's get in there. First, we're going to start out with some more basic type functions like sum, min, max, average, count, those types of things. And as you progress later and later inside of this course, we're going to see more complex, more advanced, those larger uber dynamic functions that I spoke about earlier. All right, get ready for it. Let's jump into the next lecture. We're going to take a look at our first function, those predefined calculations that are built inside of Excel. The first one that we're going to take a look at here is the sum function. This is the most common, most widely used function in all of Excel, worldwide. Now, I'm back inside of our example file. This is that monthly budget that we've built up to this point. And right now, we've got some calculations in there, right? We started out with just some basic arithmetic style calculations. For example, if I go to B9, which is my total for January, I give that 1675 a double click. This will open up my formula. There it is. And I'm just doing some addition. I'm saying take this cell, add it to this cell, then add that to this cell, this cell, this cell, this cell, right? We only had 5 records there, right? So doing this plus this plus this plus this wasn't too bad. Although I probably don't want to do a lot of it. What if you had 20, 30, 50, hundreds or thousands of records? Is that really something you want to do? You want to retype that over and over again? No way. No way. Unless I'm getting paid to do it by line item, right? Then maybe I'll do it. But probably not, right? I want to find a quicker, more efficient way of doing this. And this is where a function, something like the sum function, will come in and make this so much more efficient. Faster. It's huge, right? Let's take a look at the sum function. I'm going to hit my escape key just to close that out. Now to start this out, we're actually going to replace all of these formulas right here. So from E4 to E8 and from B9 to E9. Let's delete those out. Get rid of them. All right, you can go through, you can highlight them, just hit your delete key on your keyboard. Let's get rid of them. Now that broke the percent calculation. Not too big of a deal. It just means this pound div /0 exclamation mark error. This is your divide by 0 error. And mathematically, you can't divide by 0 because we have no numbers there. It's giving us that error. No problem. It'll come back, but we just got to fill out the calculations now. All right, here comes the sum function. Now, the process that we're about to go through here might be just a little bit different based on the version of Excel that you're working with. There might be, if you're on the brand new version, there might be a little bit of automation happening for you. If you're still sitting on 2007 or even something earlier than that, probably not, but maybe 2007, 2010, 2013, 2016, and you might see a little bit of difference, but nothing huge. And I'll talk about a difference here. Nothing huge. So I'm inside of B9, and I just want to sum up this range of cells, B4 to B8. Now, the first time we use this one, we're going to go through the formulas tab and we're going to go find the sum function. Now, some of you watching this might be familiar with the shortcut that you could use, or even a keyboard shortcut, one button press that would do all this for you. Now, if you're familiar with the shortcut, you're familiar with auto sum, just hold off for a moment. We're building some key blocks here, some key building blocks that's going to help us as we get into more and more advanced topics. So hold off on the shortcut for a moment. We're going to come back to it. All right, so I'm in B9. I'm going to go to my formulas tab. Inside of there, we got this function library. The function library contains all these books, and this might be a little bit different compared to the earlier versions. The buttons just look a little different, but for the most part, it's the same thing. I'm going to go to math and trig. Math and trig. Math's bad enough, but now you throw trig in there, and it's like, do I really want to click on that one? Math wasn't my strong suit. All right, anyways, math and trig. I'm going to go ahead and click on there. You're going to get a list of all these math-related built-in functions. Remember, predefined functions that are going to do the calculations for you based on input arguments that we give it. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to find the S's. There it is. And I'm going to find sum. There's just plain old sum. I'll give that a click. And this is going to open up the function arguments window that we saw in the prior lecture. Now here's where it might be a little bit different compared to the earlier versions, depending on what you're using. Here, all I did was formulas, math and trig, grab the sum, open up the window for me, and it's already populated B4 through B8. Done. There's my 1675. I can see the result right there. It's right there, formula result, and I'm done. I could just hit OK and call it good, right? Well, again, Excel is pretty smart, and they continually improve it. With each new iteration, Excel gets better and better, and it gets smarter and smarter. Pretty soon, Excel is going to take over the world. It's going to be able to do so much for us. It just automates the experience. Well, if you're on an earlier version, you may not have gotten the default range of cells in there. So I'm just going to delete them out of there. I got rid of what's in number 1, B4 through B8, gone. What I am going to do is I could type it in. And you say, I want B4 colon, remember through, B8. I can do that. Or, let's delete that out again. I can just select the range of cells that I want. I want B4 through B8. There it is. I'll hit OK. And there's my total, 1675. That's it. I used the built-in function sum to sum up a range of cells. Couple button presses, done. 1675. No more work for me. Now, I want you to practice this. I want you to go through and complete it for February, for March, and then I want you to come over here to the row totals for each bill, and I want you to fill that in as well. Remember, here I am inside of B4. You go to Formulas, Math and Trig, go find the sum function. There it is. Now, if it's already populated it, great. B4 through D4. If not, delete that out, and I'll just go highlight the correct range of cells. That's it. I hit OK, and there's my 3,000 for rent. So complete it. Do the rest of them there. Do the rest of the calculations. Get all your sums in there. Then we're going to take a look at a few other functions, these predefined calculations, to do some more math for us. The next two functions that we're going to take a look at here are pretty common as well. Perhaps not as common as the sum function, but you're going to see these two pretty often inside of Excel documents. We're going to look at the built-in min and max functions. Two very similar functions, and in fact, they're going to look very similar in structure. Remember the three parts? Equals, function name, arguments. Very similar to the sum function. Take a look. So I'm back inside my exercise file. Hopefully you've taken a moment to go through and practice that sum function and complete it for the rest of the months and for your row totals as well for each of the bills. Now, if you got any questions on the sum function or functions in general, jump into the Q&A section and ask your questions. Okay? Again, I love getting questions. Ask them. All right. So now, min and max. To get this set up, I'm going to scroll down just a little bit, just so I separate myself from our nice little spreadsheet. I'm going to go into row 11, and I'm going to put in some labels here. These labels, that's all they're going to be, just labels to label our calculations. So I'm going to bring in min. I'm going to hit my enter key. I'm going to bring in max, and I'm just going to get set up for the future videos. I'm going to bring in an average, and I think that'll be it for now. Average, did I spell that right? Looks odd. All right, so here, I'm going to go into B11. The first one that we're going to experiment with here is the min function. And like I said, this should feel pretty similar to working with the sum function that we saw earlier. I want to know the minimum value from a range of cells, smallest value. So I'm going to go into B11. I'm going to go to my formulas tab. We can look at our little books. Earlier, we went into math and trig, right? We wanted to do some math type operation. We wanted to sum. We found it here inside of the math function or the math folder, little book. If I scroll on through, I find the M's. There they are. But I don't see the min or the max inside of there. All right. So not inside of there. We got all these other books that we can look through as well. We got financial, logical, text, date, time, look up and reference. Ooh, I don't know. Where do you find the min and max function? Let's see, there's one called more functions. If I go into there, there's statistical, engineering, cube, information, compatibility, and so on. Let's see. I'm going to guess statistical. And if I scroll through here, I'll find the min function. Now, I knew it was there because I've been using this application forever, right? Well, where do I find it? How do I know where to find this thing at? Well, there's actually a couple different ways that we can do this. We can use the books, and as you become more and more familiar with working inside of Excel and where functions reside, it's going to be a no-brainer. Eventually, you're just going to be typing them out by hand anyways. You may not even go to the Formula tab. Well, in the meantime, as you're learning functions, I'm going to hop out of here for a moment. I'm inside of B11. That's where I want the function to show up. So here, I'm going to go click that little FX button that we talked about in a couple of prior videos. I'm going to click on the little Insert Function button. Here I get the Insert Function window where I can search. I can type in keywords. I can search by category. And down below, they'll give you suggested functions for that search term or that category. So here I can say, I want to find the min function. So I'll type that in, or I can type in minimum or whatever. I'll hit go. Go. Took a moment there. Gave me recommended, and now it's giving me some suggested or recommended functions. And there's min. So the min function returns the smallest number in a set of values. It ignores logical values in text. All right, it's looking for minimum values of numeric values. So with min selected, I'll hit OK. And this will open up the argument window. And look at that. It's already filled in some information for me. Now, let's take a closer look at that. B4 through B10. B4 through B10. Well, I don't really want that. I don't want B4 through B10. So Excel tried to help me, but B10 is empty and B9 is my total. I don't want to include the total. So I'm just going to wipe that out, delete, and I'll go grab B4 through B8. That's it. Returns the smallest number in a set of values. I'll hit OK. And for the month of January, 100 is my smallest value. Candy. Wow, Candy got the smallest one, huh? All right, there's your minimum. Again, it's just little FX button, go search for it, go to the statistical folder, whatever, find min. Should feel very similar to the sum function. Now, let's look at one more, and this is going to be almost identical. I'm going to drop down one more cell into B12 where I've got the max. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go back to FX. I'll type in max. Go. There's my recommended. I'm going to grab max. Hit OK. Same thing. Oop, B11's not right. I want B4 through B8. All right. It's giving me the result. There it is, 1,000. I'll hit OK. And I've got my maximum value, the largest value from that set of data, being 1,000. That's it. Min and max, two more predefined functions built into the Excel application. Already built for us. We just got to use it, put in the range of cells that we want, and it's done the job for us. So try this out. Get those two, but then also do it for the rest of the months. Get all these cells filled out with your min and max. And if you want to do it for the total or for the percentage, feel free to do it there as well. But get some practice in there. Then we'll jump into the next video and we'll take a look at our next predefined calculation. We're going to look at the average function. Let's take a look at another basic Excel function. We just got done looking at the sum function and the min and max function. Let's now take a look at the average function. Now, you think of average, what type of math goes into completing an average, right? I want to be able to take the cells B4 to B8. This is January's amounts here for our different bills. And I want to be able to find out what the average amount is. Well, normally, if I'm going to write this out on paper or go grab my calculator, I would take all those numbers, I would add them up, 1,000 plus 125 plus 150 plus 300 plus 100, and then I would divide that by the number of entries. In this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that would give me the average. Now, that's quite a bit of math going on. Well, thankfully, built into Excel, we have the average function that does all of that for us. All we need to do is use the average function and tell it the range of cells that we want to find the average within. Take a look. I'm going to go down into B13. This is where I put my average label earlier. Now, once I'm here, I'm going to go back to my formulas tab. I'm going to go back to math and trig, and I'm going to find average. A-V-E-R, average. It's not there. Where's that average at? I mean, that's math, isn't it? Average. My eyes aren't seeing it, right? All right, well, let's see. If I go to more functions, I go to statistical. Oh, there it is. There's my average. All right, so once again, we talked about this earlier. It's like, well, you need to learn where these functions are at. Or you can go back to that FX button. You'll find it here, that little FX. Or you can even find it up on your formula tab as well. And you can go search for it in there. Just type in the term and it'll find it for you. Okay, so it'll take some practice and getting used to which book we should be going into. So more functions, statistical, and I got average. You actually see there's a few different types of averages in there. We're going to grab just plain old average. All right, let's see, B11 to B12. Well, that's not what I want. Excel's trying to be helpful, but it grabbed the min and max values. So I'll delete that out. And I'm going to go grab the B4 to B8 values. There we have it. Should feel very similar to the sum and min and max functions. That's really it. I'll hit OK. And for the month of January 2019, I've got an average of 335. That's simple. Using the average function and giving it the proper range of cells. So try that one out. And again, complete the rest of them. Get the min and max and the average for each of the months. Let's look at one more of the basic functions built into Microsoft Excel. We've looked at sum, min, max, and average. Let's now take a look at the count function. All right, so I'm back inside of my Excel document. I'm going to drop down just into A14. I'm going to put a label here. Let's just call this count. And what I want to do is find a count of how many bills we pay each month. Now, the count function, it counts numeric values. It doesn't count empty cells, doesn't count text values. It only counts numeric values. So I'm going to hop down here into cell B14, back up to my formulas tab. I'm going to go into more functions, statistical, and let's find count. Plain old count. There's a few other count functions in here, and we're actually going to talk about each of these as we continue through the course. But for now, let's just grab plain old count. All right, so I did grab the incorrect range of cells, so I'm going to delete that out. I'm going to go grab B4 to B8. And let's see, I can see that there are 5, right? The results of this formula, there are 5 values that I've got selected there. And they are numeric values. I can see here that the count function counts the number of cells in a range, in our case B4 to B8, that contain numbers. All right, so I got back 5. If I hit OK, there's my 5. I can now complete it for the rest of the cells there. And just to demonstrate, if for some reason I didn't pay one of these bills one of the months, I delete that out. I've now got 4, right, within that slot. Right, I had 5, got rid of 1, 4. Let's put that back. Control Z, I'll undo that. There we have it. All right, that's your count function. Now remember, that only counts numeric values, not blank cells, not text, only numerics. There are other functions though. Excel's got plenty of functions in here. We haven't even skimmed the surface yet. There are so many functions, but we've used some of the common ones. Some being the absolute most common, min and max and average, pretty close up there. And we've got the count function to count numeric values within our range of cells. So go ahead and complete that one off. Count for the rest of them. Hopefully no surprise there. It should be 5 for each of them, or however many bills you got. But could you imagine if you got a whole data set of data? I don't know how many records are in there, or how many contain numeric values. Then I can use the count function to count how many numeric values fall within a range of cells. So try that one out, complete it for the rest of the months, and then let's jump into our next lectures. So let's pause for just a moment and kind of move away from using functions. I want to show something off here because it's a pretty common question that I get at this point within this Excel training. If you take a look at our spreadsheet, it's looking pretty good. We got a nice little spreadsheet there. We got some row labels with bills. We got some column headers up there, months and totals and percent. We got a nice row total there for each of our months. And we got some additional calculations here for min, max, average, and a count. I haven't completed my count yet. I'll do that in a moment. Now, if we look closely at some of these formulas, some of them have a little green triangle in the corner. See all those there? Now, what's that all about? This is a pretty common question that I get people asking. Well, what's happening here? If I click into one of those cells, I'm going to get a little box. It's a little diamond with an exclamation mark in there, and it looks like something's wrong, right? So you can look at that and be like, well, what's wrong? I mean, 1675, that sounds right. 1,000 plus 125 plus 150 plus 300 plus 100, that's 1675, right? Well, if I click that little box, this tells me that the formula omits adjacent cells. And I have the option to update the formula to include the cells, get help on the error, I can ignore it, and I got a few other options in there as well. Well, Excel is always trying to be helpful. It's a very smart application, but it doesn't have a lot of context built into it. It just sees numbers or text. It doesn't know that, oh, these numbers are bills, these values are text values for labels, these numbers are dates, they're different from currency amounts. It doesn't have that context. It just sees numbers and text. So here, we're using the sum function to sum up cells B4 to B8. That's great. That's what we want. But Excel, it sees the date up here at the top and it says, wait. That's a number too. We should be including that inside of this formula. So again, it's Excel trying to be helpful. If I go back out and I hit the little box and I say, okay, go ahead and update the formula. Whoa, what's that? 45,141? That's definitely not it. If I double click on that, B3 to B8. So now it's including that date cell. So again, I don't want that. Let's undo that, Control Z. So all I'm going to do here is say ignore the error. Or I could do this. I could select all these cells, go to the little diamond and say ignore the error. Gone. No longer there. I needed to do the same here. This one, it wants me to include the total as well and maybe the date as well. So I don't want that. I'm going to go ahead and highlight all those cells and I'll say ignore. Let's get rid of those little arrows. We don't need somebody to look at it and thinking, oh, there's something wrong with this worksheet. We've got all these errors all over the place. Well, they're not errors. It's just Excel trying to be helpful. Sometimes it's right? Oh, you missed a cell. Okay, great. I got to go back in and fix that. But in this case, we can ignore it. We don't need it. It's not helping us in any way. It's just Excel trying to be helpful and point us in the right direction. So go through, clean that up. If you're getting those little triangles, clean up those errors. Make sure Excel understands what we're trying to do here, and it's not looking at those dates anymore or the totals for us. Let's get that cleaned up. Then let's jump back into some more functions. At the beginning of this section, we started talking about functions in general, and then we got into the sum function. And I mentioned early on that we're going to start out by doing things the long way, right? First, we really started out by building a calculation that was like this cell plus this cell plus this cell and so on. And that was very time consuming and potentially full of errors if we accidentally missed a cell or included too many cells or mistyped something, right? So it was a very long and tedious process. Then we brought in the sum function that streamlined it, but we still went about it the long way. I went into a cell, I went to my formulas tab, I went into math and trig, and I went and found the sum function. It brought up the arguments window, we filled it in, I hit OK. We went through 6, 7, 8 steps in order to get that sum completed. Well, that's great, and we learned some key aspects along the way, but I want to streamline it even more. Now that we got a good understanding of functions, at least at the basic level, we can now start to use shortcuts. Let's take a look at a feature called auto sum. I want to automatically sum up a range of cells. One button press, done. And I'm going to give you a couple of ways to do this. So first, I know we just did a lot of work here to set this up and get all those formulas in, but I'm going to have you delete some of it. So I'm going to grab cells B9 to E9. I'm going to hold down my control key on my keyboard and I'm going to select E4 to E8. So that's your control key and it allows you to select a group of non-contiguous cells, non-contiguous rows or columns of cells. That was my control key. I'm on a Windows machine. If I remember correctly, and I got to jog my memory because I don't work on a Mac all the time, but I believe you hold down the Command key on the Mac to do that, to be able to select a non-contiguous group of cells. If that's not correct, jump into the comment section, let me know, and I can go and figure that out for us. I got a Mac sitting right next door to me, so I could jump over there and look as well. But I believe it's Control on the Windows, and I believe it's Command on the Mac. Either case, let's select them. Let's delete them out of there. Don't want them right now. We got some errors. That's all right. Those are going to come back. We talked about that earlier. So now I want to sum those back up. We saw the hardcore math approach, this plus this plus this plus this. We saw the function approach, which added a little more streamlined efforts, made it a little more efficient for us. Now let's see the auto sum. So I'm going to click into the B9 cell. I'm going to go to my formulas tab, and on the left, we have the auto sum. Now, if I just click on the big E button, the sigma symbol there, it'll do it for me. Look at that, B4 to B8. Didn't include the date. Great. I'm going to hit my enter key, and I'm done. I could even select arrange the cells. Let's grab all three of those empty cells down there, and I can hit the auto sum button. Again, formulas, auto sum. Look at that, 1700, 1750. There's my 0. There's no cells right there. Let's just confirm this. C4 to C8 looks great. D4 to D8, great. And I'll double click E4 to E8. Look at that, auto sum. Does it all for me. I got those errors in there. That's all right. That's at adjacent cells. I'll just ignore that. I'm going to come over here. I'll use the auto sum. Now, this is one of the reasons why I like to start at the basics first. We're about to see something here that could potentially throw an error in your calculations, utilizing a more automated approach like the auto sum. Take a look. I'm inside of E4. I want to get a total for rent across each of the months. Well, great. I'll go up to formulas, hit the auto sum, and look at that. Sum B4 to D4, got all three of the values. Great, right? That's awesome. Hit my enter key, done. I'm going to go hit the auto sum button again. Looking good. Got my B5 to D5, all three values for phone across each of the months. Now, Excel, it's a very smart, very intuitive application. But sometimes it tries to assume too much, or it relies on its default settings to accomplish a task for us. And we need to be aware of what these defaults are, especially when we're automating a process through a single button press. If I hit my enter key here, great, there's my 350. Now watch this one. How does Excel know which numbers we want? Well, it's based on the default behavior. I'm inside of E6, credit card for the 3 months. Formulas, auto sum. What do you think? It did it. It did the sum. Equals sum E4 to E5. Well, that's not what I want. I want the credit card values. Right? I mean, come on, Excel. Don't you know what I'm doing here? Right? And again, it's a smart application, but it has some limitations and it has some defaults that are built into its behaviors. So this isn't a big deal as long as we're aware of it and we recognize that something went wrong. So all that we need to do is instead of E4 to E5 is I'll go click and drag the proper range of cells. Hit my enter key, done. Let's try it again. Auto sum, Excel, you got it wrong, not a problem. I'm just going to grab the correct range of cells. And let's do this one more time. Grab that, formulas, auto sum, incorrect, grab the proper range, enter key, and I'm done. It's your auto sum button. Complete them all, get it done, single button press, be able to sum up a range of cells. If it's wrong, not a big deal. Just go correct it, give it the correct range of cells, and you're done. So try this out. Go through, delete out the totals, and repopulate them. And just for kicks, if you want some more practice with that button, you can also delete all of the min, max, average, and counts out of there. Go up to the auto sum button. It's actually got two pieces to it. If I click on the lower half, I've got average, the count function, which is count numbers, remember that one, and max and min in there, all through my auto sum button. So try that one out, complete it. I know you've done it a couple times, but now you've got a nice little shortcut. All right, just complete that, and then let's jump into the next lecture. Ooh, I forgot something in that last video. We were talking about the auto sum. I gave you a couple ways to do it. You could do it on a single cell, hit the auto sum button. You could select a range of cells and use the auto sum. That takes us back to the discussion about relative references. Because these are all the same, it's always 5 cells up. It's going to do the exact same thing across each of the ranges. Even that empty one that I did. Remember that how this total here was empty to begin with, and I auto summed it and it automatically grabbed the top 5 cells? Again, it's all based on that relative reference and using the first one as the example. I'm going to undo that. Now, the item that I forgot, and I love this one. I don't know how I left this one out, but here's its own little video, and we'll make this quick. This is the auto sum shortcut key. You got a button there, but I love keyboard shortcuts, right? My hands are already on the keyboard. Why do I have to go to the mouse and go navigate the interface? Just use a shortcut key. Take a look at this. I'm going to delete out the total row. Gone. I'm going to click into B9. This is my total for January. Now to auto sum that, I can use a keyboard shortcut. On my keyboard, I'm going to hold down the Alt key, Alt, and then the equals symbol, Alt equals. And that does the auto sum for me. Alt equals. Hit my Enter key. I'll jump over to the next cell. Alt equals. Does it for me. Super slick, super fast, nice shortcut. Again, Alt equals on my keyboard. If I go to the Formulas tab and I hover my mouse over the auto sum, it tells me, it says, hey, automatically add it up. Your total will appear after the selected cells. But here, it tells me the shortcut as well. Oops, let's get that back. I'm not going to be able to highlight it. It's right there at the top left corner of there. You can see sum, Alt, plus the equal sign. That's it. That's your shortcut key. So try that one out. Get a little practice with it. Still summing, just another approach and a nice, quick, efficient way. Nice shortcut to complete the auto sum on a range of cells. So I want to show off one more item here, and this is something that I use all the time when I'm dealing with calculations inside of Excel. And for that matter, there's other scenarios outside of calculations that I use this for as well. So it's a huge feature, one that I use all over my Excel documents. It's called autofill. Take a look. So we've been plugging in calculations. Right? We got one calculation in there for January. We then move to February. We do that one. We go to March. We do that one. We go do the totals for each of the bills. We did min, max, and average. We did each of them individually. Well, there's a lot of similarities between each of our functions. For example, my first function here for January, it's a sum function, and it's summing up the 5 cells directly above it. The next one, it's the exact same formula, the exact same function. The only difference is it's in a new position, but I still want the 5 cells directly above it. And then the next one, it's in a new position, but it's still the 5 cells up above. Well, there should be a way to automate that. You guessed it, there is. And it's the autofill. Take a look. I'm going to go ahead and once again, all that work, I'm going to delete it out. Let's just get rid of our calculations. And you know what? Even for fun, I'm going to get rid of the percent as well. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create the first one, and I'm going to use the shortcut key. So here I am instead of B9. I'm going to hit Alt plus the equal sign, Alt equals. That sums it up. Let's just confirm. B4 to B8 looks good. Hit my Enter key. There's my 1675. I don't care about that error. Let's go ahead and ignore that. All right, so now I need to populate the rest. Well, remember, all I need to do is this formula, I need to move it over here. And then I need to move it over here and then over here. It's always the 5 cells up above. Well, earlier when we were doing the percent, I had you copy paste. You created the first one, copied it, pasted it, pasted it, and it ended up using that relative and absolute referencing that we talked about. Well, here, the autofill command, if I go to 1675, the autofill is this little box in the corner, this commonly overlooked feature. And it's huge. It's going to do so much for you and automate your steps. If I move my cursor right over the top of that little box, I get a little black plus sign. Now, if I click and hold down, I can drag that over all the way there, and it's just going to copy that formula for us. That's it. I'm going to hop up here, auto sum, B4 to D4, Looks good. Enter. Grab that one, grab the little box in the corner, and drag it down. And there's my totals. Super slick. It's like copy and paste, and it's just performing the exact same formula, just based on its new position. And it's really important that we understand the relative and absolute referencing. So if something's not quite clear there, remember that deals with, from this location, I'm just going 5 cells up. Sum that up. From this location, go 5 cells up, right? Just based on its new position. If it's still not clear, again, go to the Q&A section or go back and rewatch the videos on absolute and relative referencing. It's really easy to do, and it's really short. Now, what I want you to do is complete that, use the autofill, populate those cells, get rid of those silly little errors, and then I want you to recreate the percent one. Recreate the first one, and then copy it down. Now, you're going to need to remember relative versus absolute, right? The first time you do it, you might get an error, but then just go back in and adjust the cell referencing. Remember the dollar signs. All right, complete that. Use the autofill to do the rest of them, and we'll call this one complete for right now, and we're going to move into our next set of topics. So hopefully you're enjoying this. You're learning something new. Even if you've been using Excel for years, hopefully you picked up something new as we've been talking about functions inside of Excel.